Hey guys, I'm Lexie Smith, a mom multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, founder of the PR Bar Inc. coaching platform, and CEO of Growth Mode Agency, a PR and communications agency for brands in growth mode. In my career, I've had the privilege of guiding countless brands, ingenious publicists, eager students, and ambitious entrepreneurs on their PR journeys. I've danced with the giants and nurtured startups, directed in-house PR departments, lent my expertise to boards, and spread knowledge across universities nationwide. Throughout all of this, I've seen our industry change and evolve while simultaneously proving that some timeless fundamentals remain unshaken. This show takes you behind the scenes of the world of media, marketing, and PR, aiming to teach you all the new tips, tricks, and how the best and brightest are achieving success over sips. Now it's time to grow. Welcome to the show. Maria Streshinsky is the executive editor of features at Wired. Before joining Wired, she was the editor-in-chief at Pacific Standard, a magazine she launched in 2012. In its first year, Pacific Standard was nominated for a National Magazine Award for General Excellence. In 2014, the publication won National Magazine Award for Public Service for a story that Maria edited. Maria also served for many years as the managing editor at The Atlantic, where she won the Atlantic Media Company Award for Editing Excellence. She has also worked for the Department of the Interior in Washington, D.C., as well as a stint in New York as a freelance editor and writer. Maria, I am so thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with you today. I admire the work that you do greatly at Wired, but before we get into work stuff, I always love to ask, what is it that you like to do outside of work for fun?
Oh boy. Well, thank you, Lexi. It's really nice to be here. I appreciate it. What I like to do is be outdoors, skiing, hiking, canoeing. Just get me out away from city. I love the city. I love San Francisco, but get me out into the wilderness. And I just feel like it's kind of the best place for ideas to come to.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and you're
not to
staring at
connect
a
with,
screen so much all day, right? Which I
yes,
get too,
yeah,
I imagine. It's a
yeah.
nice departure.
I
So
just
San
got,
Francisco, is that home base?
yeah, San Francisco's home base, which is good. It gives me good access to close enough wilderness.
Yeah, you do. Northern California is beautiful. I'm
Yeah.
in Southern California,
Yeah.
but originally from Oregon. So
Oh, so yeah.
right in the middle.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so let's dive straight into
Okay.
career cliff notes. So there's no rules here. It's start wherever you want to start and bring us up to today.
I'm going to admit something, which is, I suppose you'd call me a Nepo baby, although not really. Both my parents were journalists. My mother was a magazine writer. My father was a photographer. My mother is a magazine writer. My father was a photographer. And when I got out of college, I just knew I wanted to do something in publishing. And I stumbled into this really funny little job at a AAA magazine that had a huge circulation because it went to every AAA member. And it was a travel magazine. And my job was to do the events column. So I got to know where the rock sales were, what every city in California was known for. Gilroy garlic, of course, Petaluma was chickens and eggs, that kind of thing. And then after being at that, I kind of climbed up really very luckily at that magazine with a wonderful boss. And then I just realized like, no, I need to get out and do some stuff that's a little bit more core to, people's lives and what matters in people's lives. And then that took me in this kind of roundabout way through Mother Jones. And then I did a very short but really, really amazing stint working in the government in Washington, D.C. at the Department of Interior. And that led me to the Atlantic, where I loved working there and ended up as their managing editor, which then led me to that Pacific Standard job that you mentioned, which was really a wild experience. And we joked about it being kind of the last print magazine. There was a woman who was based out here in California and wanted to fund a magazine that would have impact from the West. And that was just so dear to my heart because I'm a Westerner at heart. And so I got to come home and then ended up at Wired.
Okay, few things. You probably have 5,000 fun facts from the AAA days. The fact, would you say the garlic Gilroy? What's the funniest? Maybe you just shared them. Do you have like a funny one that comes to mind? What a city's known for?
Oh man, I wish I had gone back and looked. I used to have really funny ones. There was, like I said, it was like egg days in Petaluma, Gilroy Garlic Festival, artichokes from, oh no, I'm not going to remember the name, and I have a former
Like
editor.
totally put you on the spot.
No,
It's
no, no,
okay.
no. I just there was artichokes, strawberry, there's Watsonville. Yeah, there was just,
And the list goes on.
the list goes on. Yeah.
Completely unrelated, but my daughter has a word of the week. We always teach her, and last week it was artichoke. So it's funny you say that. So she's walking around going, artichoke now. It's very cute.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's very cute. Okay, and then also I feel like I need to hear a little bit more how you segue from publishing to DC real quick. Was it just like that felt like
I know, it's just
a transition?
Yeah. Weirdly, okay, so that first job, which was at a AAA magazine called Via, ended up taking me all around the West. And one of the things I wrote about at one point and was a bunch of different places in Arizona, and that took me to Indian country. And so then there was a job open. It's this very small but amazing world in the Department of Interior under Indian Affairs, basically. And so I went to work, because I had a little bit of experience there, I went to work in public information on something called it was the Office of the Special Trustee for American Indians. And it was the most fascinating, like, wonderful people, very small issue that's not small issue, very big issue in Indian country, but one that a lot of people don't know about because it's not talked about a lot in the news. And that took me to DC. It was time for me to go spend some time on the East Coast and, broaden my landscape. And then the Atlantic job popped up on like journalismjobs.com or Craigslist, I think, and I managed to get that job, which was incredible. So that was a big pivot.
Got it. Okay. Are now returning home. So are you from San Francisco?
I grew up in the Berkeley Hills. Yeah.
Okay.
Near Berkeley. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So now today you're the executive editor of features at Wired. Big question. What is the day and the life of the executive editor of features at Wired look like?
Well, I would say normally it looks like really fun and also super stressful. At times, I have this incredible team of feature editors. We get to do the big stories, the big, long, deep dives. We get to work with incredible writers and incredible subjects. And I'm not saying that just to sound fluffy. Today, what it looks like is there's a big story going up tomorrow about Reddit, the company, and we had a reporter here work with another writer on just kind of like looking at the 20 years of Reddit's history because they're about to IPO. And so today looks like trying to get the social team coordinated and get the piece ready in Copilot, which is our content management system, make sure all the pull quotes, make sure the head and deck are correct, make sure the copy editors have a chance to proofread it. It's 8,000 words. And then, like hit the publish button so that it's scheduled to publish tomorrow morning. So that, and then the other thing for me is that there's a July, August issue looming over me. And I'm worried about having like a big, good subject on the cover. So today I'm worried about that. And I'm trying to figure out, that actually pivots us into something that we launched last year, which is called the Big Interview, the Wired Big Interview, in which we decided we wanted to have really deft, like thoughtful writers sit down with really interesting, hopefully big names or just super interesting people doing very big, important things. These all sound like such silly words to be using, but I'm worried about making sure that the cover of the July, August issue has like somebody that everybody wants to read about at that time frame. So that's what my day looks like today.
Plus this podcast. Thank you for
Plus this podcast. No, of course. Of course.
So for before we go more specifically into Wired, I do want to break down a little bit more the concept of a feature, air
Yeah.
quote, right? And what that entails. And really from the journalistic lens, how is a feature
Yeah.
different from other types of
Yeah.
stories?
Such a good question, and one we actually talk about all the time. Like, it's, you would think that we would have it down, but it's an ongoing conversation. I think the very simplest way we talk about it is a feature is a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and not a topic. We get pitched topics all the time, like, I want to write about the government's request for private data on iPhones, but that's a topic. A story would be, and in fact, there's a pitch we got that's a very good pitch that is a court case where there was a fire that happened and sadly people died, and there was the government wanted to use iPhone data basically in the search for who did it. And that is a way that, and then there's these three interesting characters who sort of surround this and this tragedy. And I don't want to say that we always need a tragedy, of course, but because there is a tragedy, it gives a real emotional weight to a story. And so in this case, this is a story that's going to have a beginning, middle, and end because there was an event, there are people involved, and there's a court case and a decision that's been, a ruling.
Yeah.
In another way that might make a little more sense for your audience, and I might use this example a couple of times in us talking, but Lauren Good, who's one of our terrific writers here on staff, she wrote a feature a couple of years ago that was personal to her because, we all know about photo memories, right? Like, memories pop up a year later on your phone or in your Facebook or wherever it is. And we all have heard about and probably talked to people who that actually can be a hard moment. Like, hard things happen in our lives and people pass away or you have a breakup or something, and a year later a photo pops up. And so Lauren had a breakup, an engagement breakup, and photos started popping up. And so she actually wanted to find out, she actually went to the source. We call this kind of a story zero, and she figured out who started the idea of photo memories in the tech companies, like who sold it to who. And then she chased that down and she went in and talked to different companies that were using photo memories, or whatever their version of photo memories are, and how the developers were thinking about it as a product. And so she used her own personal story to figure out the origin of it and then talk to them about how they thought about the effects that are both positive and hard sometimes. And I loved that example because it was one of the things we try to do at Wired is really talk about how technology and science affects us humans, affects us individuals. And so that comes back around to, that's why we try to, in the features department here, we try to tell stories, not topics, because stories can get at how does this thing really affect us as human beings.
I love that breakdown so much. I know obviously we're oversimplifying how much work goes into this, but the story versus topic. Now, a story like, let's talk about the Reddit one going out tomorrow. How long has the story been in the works for your team?
Percolating?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably 6 months, maybe 8 months, because we knew. So what happened here is we got a pitch from a freelancer because a year ago, July, there was this, I don't know if you remember, there was a big protest by the moderators on Reddit, and it kind of shut down a lot of subreddits for a couple of weeks. And it was big media story and technology news. And so that's like affecting people's lives, right? And he then pitched a story, there's always daily stories about that kind of thing. And then we as feature thinkers can sit back and think like, okay, all the daily stories have come and gone. Is there a bigger story to tell? And that one pivoted nicely into the fact that Reddit has been trying to get to where they could IPO, or I'm not sure the right economic terminology here, but hold an initial public offering. And so we actually paired that writer who knew so much about the moderator community with our inside reporter who knows so much, who has been covering the company. And we paired them together to do a kind of back and forth story where we would go from the moderator's point of view to inside to try to get as much information as we could about how the company is prepared, what has gone right, what has gone wrong for this initial public offering, because we kind of feel like Reddit is, and this you could see this in the headlines, one of the last bastions of authenticity on the internet where people really get to be themselves for good and bad. And so it's really a human story in that way too. So we felt like this was a good thing to try to get our arms around. And Wired tries to do sort of like a big look at a company that is affecting so many people's lives and what's happening with that company. And the hardest part, again, is to try to find a way to tell that story.
And 6 months. No, I think it's thank you for sharing that. And I want to highlight that again, because I mean, if on the PR side of things, a publicist had $1 for every time an entrepreneur or company came and wants a feature, and they want a feature next month because their retainer's starting now, when that's just not, it's not the way the cookie crumbles usually.
Right.
Kind of on that note though, something that, just quick on me, I've played in a lot of different spaces, and one of the spaces my agency plays in is tech and telecom. And something some of my account managers were frustrated with me, or like venting to me about semi recently, which I thought kind of was relevant to bring to this show, is that unless your name is Tesla or Elon Musk, or you're, a Reddit, it's really hard to grab a headline. And so when we look at an outlet like Wired, is there space, is there a place for the quote unquote little guy?
Yeah. So I mean, we have a big newsroom. We do many stories every week. We have a business channel with terrific editors and writers there. We often follow stuff that we cover as feature editors. We will follow stuff that the news desks are covering. And a bunch of the writers on the news desks will then like take iterative reporting into being a feature, or use their iterative reporting in a feature down the road, right? As far as the small guys, I know it's tough, right? It's really hard. And I'm going to be really honest, like we're very wary of like one app or like single app stories, or, single ideas, or something's packaged up. I can't quite remember what it was, but something that had been around San Francisco for years that was then, being kind of packaged up as like a tech story now. And what we're really looking for is something that is new and impactful to a wide audience. So the single app stories are really tough, right? Because those are really legitimate businesses, and a lot of them, like, look at TikTok. That is a single app.
Yeah.
But it is TikTok, or, a new social media app, or a new, I don't know what, clothing
Just like a startup
a startup.
playing in the,
Right.
in the tech space in some
Right. And so what I would say is in the beginning, focus on daily news coverage in terms of, don't try to go for a feature until you have a story that can prove that there's like really widespread impact.
Yeah.
There's also we don't do a lot of these, but there are really compelling stories about founders. And I have noticed in a good way that a lot of people are starting to pitch their products with the story of the person behind it. I mean, and I think that's a very effective way to do it. I think it's still going to be tough for a feature, because again, features want all of these layers, and they want beautiful writing, and they want emotion, and they want to entertain and educate the readers. And and this is maybe a terrible bias of media. The other thing that does happen is places get attention when the owners and the startup people are kind of already themselves famous.
Yeah.
Which is, it's so-and-so's new thing, which I think is fair sometimes and not fair.
Yeah. You get both sides of the coin, because at the
Right.
end of the day, these outlets too, they need views, they need clicks to still keep employing the writers and the editors and consumers. We keep clicking that because we know who they are. We want to know what Elon's doing now, or insert. So it's a completely
No.
double-edged sword. I
Oh
totally.
boy, we could have a long talk about the trials and tribulations of the business side of the media.
Yes. And that is a topic I've gone into on this show. Before we get to that, let me bring us here, because we had some exchange in coming to this meeting today, and a word was brought up, or a topic was brought
Yeah.
up, that I was like, huh, out of, the 100 plus some episodes I've done, that's never been talked about on the show. And basically, guys, to kind of catch you up to speed, we were gonna do this interview, and then what happened was you had, quote, a closing, or let me rephrase this. This
Yeah.
is not quote.
No,
On our initially selected recording day, it turned out you were, quote, closing the magazine.
yeah.
So can you share what that means?
Yes, it's so funny. It's like living in the 90s when magazines were a real thing. When actual print magazines is what I mean. And what it means is we have this actual deadline that the printer is waiting for all the files to be uploaded to the printer, and it goes through this like really fun, crazy process that's going to seem so archaic to I don't know, to most, right? But the process is, we have a very clear editing process where we put writers through a lot. We have a very detailed fact-checking process. We have a very detailed copy editing, proofreading process. And in there, we have incredible designers here at the magazine. I mean, Wired has this wonderful design reputation too. And so we work closely with the designers to design layouts, like old school print layouts. And we had to be on press by Friday or Monday. And the Reddit story that I was telling you about, like, it was a very, very heavy fact checking process. It was 8,000 or 9,000 words. We needed to talk to Reddit for comment. We needed to make sure every line that we had written was supportable. We want to be very fair. We want to be accurate. So it was just that, like Wednesday, I should have been done by Wednesday morning when we were scheduled, and it just wasn't done.
Because life, right? So
Right, exactly.
did you know that I send out a community newsletter roundup every Tuesday, chocked full of resources, media kit downloads, journalist contact information, event invites, visibility opportunities? Basically, if you're not on the list, hit pause and sign up. It is super simple. All you gotta do is go to theprbarinc.com/newsworthy. That link is in the show notes too. Okay, back to the show. Okay, so this is another reason why I want to bring this up. This can happen even on a hyper local scale, guys. If you end up developing a relationship with, let's say, like a local magazine that gets published every Friday, being mindful of deadlines and the fact that there are human beings behind the scenes rushing, and like taking that as a cue for your own timing and when you reach out, I think is something I learned early on to be really mindful of, but is worth highlighting. And I love that you're highlighting this human component of it, because it segues into this ongoing conversation I continue to bring to the show, because it's changing. And I really want to hear your opinion on it, especially considering that you're in Wired. I've asked this question of a lot of different journalists, but no one's been so closely connected to this tech beat.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. This is a big question, and you can take it wherever you want. Your overall opinion on how AI is impacting the media industry.
Yeah. It's funny. It's so much easier to talk about how AI could be affecting science and health and all of these places where you could see it really having a great impact, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Hard not to talk about it in media as being scary.
Yep.
Hard. I also, from my viewpoint and where I get to sit, in a way, I think that I might be, again, like super lucky, because one of the things that is proven by the data for us is a story that is really well written, clear to a reader, beautiful prose, pulls you in emotionally. They do better. They just do better. Do I think that an AI can get there eventually? Maybe. I'm not sure. I mean, there's probably evidence of it already. I mean, um, we've had some writers who have done some work elsewhere in here about like sort of tracking how a chat GPT will help them write. I think I think it's scary. I think it's scary. I feel like I want to be very much in support of where something like generative AI or AI in general can be very, very good for society, and I am. But when it comes to like replacing, um, I'm sure there's economists who would talk about efficiency being a good thing, and I think that's probably true. And I think AI will help supplement other kinds of jobs. But as somebody who is coming from a place of just loving the spoken word or the written word, I just feel like it's kind of it's a sad and scary thing to have those jobs be taken over. Um, and to date, I'm not un, there may be a pathway in which there does grow, like an industry grows out of this that is supplemental, like that is using AI in a way, generative AI, in a way that is very supplemental to a creative industry.
Yeah.
That I am all for. And if it's in writing great press releases or if it's in writing great stories and it becomes supplemental and supportive and helpful, like I don't want to like come out of the gate and say, I don't want to see that. But at the moment, I'm just apprehensive of it in terms of actual usage in media, you know.
Scare. I think scary is literally an exact word I've used on this
Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
and wanting to, if we
Yeah.
have a giant pro and con list, I can
Right.
advocate for some pros, I can advocate, say
Yes,
a lot of
exactly.
cons, but thank you for sharing your perspective. I just
And I
you're
feel
on the
like,
front lines. So
well, and I I have to say, I don't feel like it's a very unique perspective, right? Like I wish I had something very unique to say, which is again, I do have a lot of hope for it in the sciences and in health and in um, other things. You just see, I think I see technologies over and over again, and Wired's founding is kind of a very great reflection of this as an optimistic and hopeful thing that will help democratize. And that has always left out the sort of the hard and difficult parts of human nature that will use it for bad.
yeah.
And that tension it's just not going to go away with generative AI, right?
Well, I do think there's an interesting and different point that you highlighted, and maybe it's not different to you, but different to what I'm hearing is really the separation of type of story
Yeah.
too. And to your point, the human component involved in the curation of a feature story, at least today, in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, cannot be replicated by a robot.
Right.
Where we're going to be 5 years from now, whoa, I don't even know. But
Right.
today, and I'm very pro the journalist. I went to journalism school. I'm on that lens. And so one thing I like to do on this show too is take a moment to speak to who you are as an individual, meaning we're gonna go into something that I call rapid fire.
Oh
And
boy.
there's no right or wrong answers. It's just your opinion, you as Maria.
Okay.
So um, first, I want to clarify, actually, before we enter rapid fire. Do you receive pitches ever?
Um, from communications professionals or writers?
That's a great question. Both.
Yes. I
Yes,
guess
on
I could
both.
just say yes. More so on writers.
Okay. Okay.
More so on writers.
More so in writers. So let's look at this from, I think actually, maybe this is interesting. No one's ever brought that up before
No.
as an editor. So I'm curious as I go through these questions, if there's a different answer
Okay.
for the calm side, let me know.
Okay.
That'll be an interesting experiment. Okay. So preferred day of the week to be pitched,
Oh, Monday or Tuesday.
Monday or Tuesday, time of day.
It doesn't really matter, but earlier in the day is better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pleasantries. So should they take a moment or two up top to kind of acknowledge you as a human, or do you want to get straight to the point?
I would say take a quick moment to acknowledge you as a human. It does, I'm going to admit, it does catch my attention. And I
Okay.
actually feel like this is me very personally, but I feel more beholden to somebody who is going to say, "Hi, Maria, I hope you're having a good day," or just like, "I know you're busy," or just like a personal, like I will feel more beholden because somebody has now connected to me personally, right? That's
Yep.
the obvious point. And for somebody like me who doesn't, I don't like to disappoint people, it's harder to ignore it. Let's put
Yeah.
it that
Yeah.
way.
Okay. Follow-ups. Are follow-ups okay?
Yeah, follow-ups are okay. Okay, now I'm going to split this between the writer
Okay.
and the
Yes.
comms.
Great.
It's interesting because I've been getting a lot of comms pitches lately that folks are following up, which, it's their job. It's hard. Like that is a hard job to have. And so no, I hate to admit that sometimes I just, I don't answer every comms pitch,
Yeah.
but I'm answering more of them that follow up. Which I
Okay.
shouldn't admit, but I'm
You
gonna
are
admit.
so nice. You are totally fine. The fact that you even like care, thank you to us
Well,
all.
it's their jobs. I mean, it's people's
Yeah.
jobs, and it's
Yeah.
a super important job for our industry. So I
Yeah.
get that. Writers, if you're a writer, definitely follow up because I try to make sure every writer who is pitching us, I either will give it to another editor, or I will try to answer myself. If we don't, it means that it's slipped out of our inbox or it's slipped off of we didn't check it as a, item to do later. So follow up.
Okay. Fantastic. Social media DMs. Are you pro getting pitched to
Definitely.
on like a LinkedIn or an Instagram or keep it to inbox?
For me personally, keep it to inbox because I mean, I've never been, I'm going to admit my sort of cranky age here. I've never been a big social media. I've always had dreams earlier on, I had dreams of becoming like a much bigger social media user. I think probably like many people, we've really pulled back, when Twitter/X has gone through its transformation, let's just call it that. Um, I just use Instagram for cute animals now, for like a break of cute animals. And I won't look at DMs as much in social media. So stick to the inbox.
Okay. This is an interesting one too for features, I think. Assets up front in the pitch. So,
Mhm.
especially considering a feature is a full story,
Right.
how much of that story do you want painted in that first pitch? And maybe this also is a separation of church and state. I don't know, between
Yeah,
writers and comms.
it's separation of church and state for sure. Um, when you say assets, let me talk, like break that down to what it means to me.
Ooh,
In a pitch, I would say from comms, if the if there's a human being behind the thing you are pitching, try to tell their real story. Try to be honest about them. Like, I know that can get hard and you have to be really careful because there's a lot of horrible people out there. There's a lot of media that just has to do quick churn. Um, and God bless them. It's their jobs too. But try to really tell something very human about the person behind it or the effect that the product, where the product sits and like the human effect for Wired for us. If you're a writer, yeah, I want to see your really elegant writing. I want to see that you've thought about a person as a character. And that means to me, like, think about is this somebody you want to spend time with? And therefore, would the reader want to spend time with them? And so try to
mm,
show that on the page. For writers, you also want scene, you want to know that there's a beginning, middle, and end to a story. And so in a short way, show that or you're willing to go chase what those would be. Um, Another thing we get a lot that we kind of have this other saying, and this is more for writers, I would say. People sometimes pitch questions, and what we say is you should pitch answers, not questions. Now, that's a little tricky, but a writer might pitch I want to find out about the person behind this product or this phenomenon. But actually, you need to do a little bit of legwork and find out why I care about the person behind that phenomenon or that product or that story.
yeah, that makes sense.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question for this is if someone is going after a feature, do you prefer they pitch you as the editor, or do you think maybe it's more a suggestion they go to one of your writers who then obviously has to take it to you? So basically, who is the preferred gatekeeper for you at Wired?
That is a great question. For comms professionals,
Let's do comms. Yeah.
I think it is probably a better move to go to a writer who writes about that topic or that area. That's probably the better move, and we've got a roster full of them. Because if I know my writers have vetted, and looked at this and thought this does rise up in the inbox, then as features, we're going to take it much more seriously.
Yeah.
In fact, I get a lot of comms pitches that I say, this is probably a pitch for our business desk, or this is probably a pitch for our science desk, or something like that. Pivoting to writers, what I would say in this case, it's a very different answer, is we have a How to Pitch Wired guide for writers on our website. And we have a list of editors, and I would actually pitch those editors just because they're going to be like, I'm focused on all of it, managing, production, staff, future plans, but feature editors' job is like find pitches, bring pitches, edit stories. So you're going to get a little more attention from them than you would from me.
The nuances of all the titles and the newsrooms, and
I know.
What I always tell people who are pitching on the writer side, because sometimes you even have maybe like a founder who wants to become a contributor or an expert, so maybe they aren't a full-time journalist. I always go, read the directions. If they're telling you how they want to be pitched on that side of things, read them. Do that.
Yes.
So it's the one time where it's a little more clear cut than
and in fact, there's really good language at the top of our pitch guide that would be valuable to anybody. And it has to do with like this line that we like about amaze us. Like, we know a lot about technology and science, but amaze us. Show us something we don't know. No pressure. No pressure.
Fair enough. So my last question for you on this is a signature one for this show. We've talked a lot about Pitchin, but we have not asked the key question of what we can find you sipping. So what is your favorite beverage? It can be alcoholic or non-alcoholic.
Okay, I'm gonna go with since it's still noon and I'm actually just not a big drinker, because early on, this is a strange fact about me, and at the end of college, I became kind of allergic to alcohols. So
I have a couple friends where in the last 5 years that's kind of been transitioning to them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was some enzyme. Some doctor said I just don't have some enzyme or whatever. But I do like a good glass of white wine in the evenings at time to time. But lately I've been into this very strange thing, which is for my morning, like really hot milk with a little bit of chocolate. So a hot chocolate that's super light on the chocolate. That's like my latest, the last couple of months, this is my thing. It's weird.
Yummy. It's not that weird. I don't think that's weird at all. It sounds yummy.
A little bit of sweet, not too sweet. Just I want that warm, wintry, even though we're hopefully starting to pull out of wintry, but it's been so wintry here for California and rainy that's been my thing.
It has been. Meanwhile, too, I laugh when I'm on a Zoom call with someone back east and it's -15, at least down here in SoCal. I know you're a little colder. I'm like, I'm so cold. It's 59.
Right, exactly. Okay, wait, but to be fair, what is your drink? What is your sipping?
Wow, so many firsts today. The reality is I drink far too much coffee, oat milk, and I'm I love wine on the weekends, but it can make me drag my feet. I'm into some hard kombuchas lately. There's a local one where I live called Flying Embers. Shout out if you're in Southern California. I have no idea how widespread they are, but Flying Embers hard kombucha, I really like. So.
We both sound like such West Coasters and Californians right now, but I agree. I would say the hard kombucha lately has been a good soft way to have a drink.
Yeah. Well, there we go. We are. And I just went to London 2 weeks ago and I was looking for their seltzers and realized wow, this is very niche even to the US at this point in time to some extent. I digress. Okay. So if someone were wanting to connect with you guys, this is not me telling you to go spam her inbox, but if someone wanted to connect with you in some capacity, what would be the best place to send them?
I would think my email, Maria_Streshinsky, and I'm going to say, go figure out how to spell it at wired.com.
Show notes, guys. We got
show notes. But I would encourage you to look at the writers who cover the areas that for comms folks, cover that area, your area. For writers, look at the editors that we have on our pitch guides. And if it doesn't feel right, like you could pitch me and you can say, be happy to work with one of your editors. Just because, again, for me, it's like my favorite part of my job that I get to do the least, right? Is work directly with writers.
Yeah. That's how I feel about being a business owner. I'm like the actual PR part of it is
Right.
I'm like, I have accounting and I have this and this. So I get it. This has been such a wonderful episode. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your honesty, and thank you for your time. And good luck with your article. It'll be live, guys, by the time this airs. So go and read it. Read it.
Thank you so much,
Right.
Lexie. I really appreciate it.
Hey guys, if you are enjoying the Pitchin and Sippin podcast, please do me a huge favor and leave a review wherever you are listening. If you want to connect with me to learn more about the PR Bar Inc., you can do so on Instagram at @thePRBar_Inc., or you can check out my website at theprbarinc.com. Cheers!